You know, when you pick up Ayn Rand's novel, The Fountainhead, you might think it's just a story about architecture, but it's so much more than that. It's really a philosophical blueprint. It lays out the fundamental clash between two kinds of people: the creator, who builds from a vision that's entirely their own, and the conformist, who kind of just borrows from everyone else. And right at the center of it all, it asks a really tough question.
See, the core conflict in this book isn't just about a man fighting against society. No, it's about a man fighting the temptation inside himself, the temptation to sell out his beliefs just to get a little approval. It's a fight for integrity itself.
So let's dive into that first blueprint, the design for the self-sufficient spirit. This is the model for that totally uncompromising person who plays by their own rules, a figure we see embodied in the novel's main character, the architect Howard Roark. At the very heart of this blueprint is what Rand calls the ideal man. Now listen, this isn't about being perfect or flawless, it's about being whole. Just imagine someone whose motivation, their purpose, their entire sense of self-worth, it all comes from inside. They simply don't need to look to anyone else for a thumbs up.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting. This diagram basically shows us how the creator's mind works. You see, the engine is powered by two things: an internal fire, that's the vision, the passion, and rational ethics, a moral code based on reason. But look closely at that third pipe, the one labeled external validation. See how it's completely shut off? It's rejected. It has zero power to fuel this engine.
And what you get from that is what's shown here, a totally self-sustaining system. An internal idea sparks real, authentic creation, and that creation leads to self-validation. It's a perfect closed loop, completely shielded from what society wants or demands. The creator doesn't need applause to know their work is good. For them, the work is the reward.
In this line from Howard Roark, man, it just perfectly captures that spirit. When people challenge him for breaking the rules, he's not defensive. It's just a pure, simple statement of fact. It's about his unstoppable internal drive. All right, so now let's look at the flip side. Let's examine the second blueprint, which gives us a completely different model for a person. This is the secondhander, someone whose entire reality is basically borrowed, just a reflection in the eyes of other people. Just look at this diagram. It's the mirror opposite of the creators. It's a parasitic loop. The main fuel source isn't some internal fire. It's an external infusion of what other people think. And that doesn't lead to creation, it leads to imitation. The result isn't real satisfaction. It's just a temporary feeling of relief, which is always followed by this deep, creative emptiness. It's a truly vicious cycle of neediness. And the character Peter Keating from the novel? He's the perfect case study for this. His #1 motivation in life is what other people think of him. Creatively, there's just nothing there. He's hollow. So he climbs the social ladder not with actual talent, but by schmoozing and flattering everyone. His whole life is just a big performance for an audience. But here's the thing. The world isn't a simple black and white picture of creators and second-handers. The novel actually shows us a whole spectrum of compromise. And it's along this spectrum that we can really see what each character is made of and where we meet the story's real villain.
This table lays it all out pretty clearly. So you've got Roark, the creator, whose validation is internal. Then you've got Keating, the conformist, whose validation is external. Simple enough, right? But now look at that third column, Ellsworth Toohey. His validation doesn't just come from the outside, it comes from controlling the outside. His ultimate goal isn't just to be liked, it's to have power over other people.
And Toohey's method for getting that power is, well, it's insidious. He actually weaponizes the idea of altruism. By preaching that selflessness is the greatest possible virtue, he makes people feel guilty for their own talent, for their own ambition. This guilt creates a kind of structural rot in their soul, making them desperate for his approval and incredibly easy to control. His mission is chilling, really. He wants to kill the hero in man.
And you see the devastating result of living a compromised life in the tragic story of Gail Wynand. Here's a guy who built a massive media empire by giving the public exactly the kind of trash they wanted. He had enormous influence, but when he finally tried to stand for something real, when he tried to support Roark, he found out all that power was completely hollow. The foundation, built on nothing but flimsy public opinion, just crumbled at the first real test.
So, okay, after looking at all these different blueprints of the human spirit, what's the ultimate principle holding it all together? What's the main takeaway? Well, it all boils down to one thing: the integrity of the self.
The final, and maybe most critical distinction the book makes you see, is the one between true creation and so-called charity. In Rand's philosophy, real creation is driven by a passion for the work itself. Period. But any work that's done just to serve others, or to appease them, or to get their approval, that kind of work just doesn't have the structural integrity to be great. It's fundamentally hollow.
This all comes to a climax at Roark's trial, where he basically delivers his manifesto to the world. He argues that it's the egoist, the self-sufficient creator, who is the real engine of all human progress. And he declares that independence, that unwavering ability to stand alone for what you believe in, is the only true measure of a person's virtue.
And that leaves us with one final, very personal question to think about. When you look at your own work, your own life, what will you build today that is truly yours, something that's completely free from the need for anyone else's approval? What will you create without compromise?